Peoples of the worldwide federated internet, what is good? People, as always, thank you for joining me. You know what it is. It's time for the Monday morning quarterback report. You know what I mean. Everybody's talking about Afghanistan and the things that's going on there. And I'm going to talk about it. I'm going to say there's no right answer. I've been over there. I've been over there many times over the past 10 years, several times. Again, there's no right answers. Everybody is looking to put the sole blame of everything on one person. I don't really think that's tenable. I don't think that's the right way to look at it. But there is certain things you can blame on one party. And when I say one party, I'm not talking about political parties. I'm talking about people. President Trump definitely had missteps in, I'd say, the way things were orchestrated. Let's put it that way. If you've not heard it, there's a good interview with the gentleman by the name of Matthew Zeller, and the interview was conducted by Valuetainment, Patrick Bet-David. If you've never heard his podcast or followed him, he interviews a bunch of interesting people across, different fields. It's not just his podcast is not a political podcast. He's interviewed Kobe Bryant. He's interviewed other athletes. He's interviewed doctors. He's interviewed business people. I believe he runs a marketing company, and he started a podcast pretty well known in that circle. Matthew Zeller really laid out some what I thought was appropriate criticism of President Trump as far as some decisions he made leading up to the withdrawal from Afghanistan. Now, I had posted a video to my Instagram page today where I played the audio from that interview. Now, that Instagram page is more dedicated to my Bible podcast, but some people who follow me on there, we kind of run in the same social media circles, so I knew they wouldn't mind. My Instagram is kind of different. For those of you who haven't followed me on Instagram, I actually get more traction on Instagram than I get on Rumble or YouTube, or I'm on Minds and I'm on BitChute. But the majority of my interactions actually happen on Instagram more than anything. But needless to say, so I posted that video, and I posted a video for two reasons. One, out of fairness. What I noticed, and I said this in that video, is last presidential cycle, presidential cycle, however you want to call it, people who lean more conservative refused at any moment. Well, let me backtrack that, because I want to be appropriate in what I say and how I convey this thought. People within the more conservative circle who are followers of President Trump, some of which were very zealous, were hesitant rather, to criticize anything Trump did, no matter what it was. And I think that's a problem. I think you can like a person, you can support a person, and still say, yo, I support this guy or I support this woman, but this right here, yeah, that was backwards. Like he shouldn't have done this, right? I give you a prime example when the president banned bump stocks or pushed for the ATF to ban bump stocks. I think that was a mistake. I'm in a different place when it comes to the right to keep and bear arms, and it's not for the reasons you think, right? Because there's some who don't believe in owning guns, and I understand that. It's the principle. This is a part of our US Constitution. So if the government can overstep, sidestep, and go around our US Constitution in that area, then that means they can go around the whole thing, not just that area. This is a concept I don't know if most pay attention to, all right? Everybody has their soapbox issue. Everybody has things where, they're on this or on that. And sometimes if you don't care about something, you fail to see how that thing you don't care about can still affect you. And it happens. I think that happens to the best of us, right? It's happened to all of us, but it definitely happens when it comes to the US Constitution. So anyway, Afghanistan is a heavy subject. There's a lot about Afghanistan that people don't know. Why are we there? How did all of this happen? How did Al Qaeda form? How did the Taliban form? A lot of people don't know these things. And a lot of people don't realize that really and truly, we are to blame for the Taliban. We armed and trained these people. That was us. On the backs of the American taxpayer. I'm going to go to some articles and I'm going to read some things from these articles. And I'm not really going to draw any conclusions. I'll let you do some further research and draw your own conclusions. But these are just some things. Well, I may offer a little bit of commentary, but these are some things that you need to know that people are not really inclined to look up. Right? How did all of this start with us being involved with Afghanistan? If you ask the average person, they would say 9/11. And it's not necessarily wrong, but our involvement in Afghanistan began way before that. And in some ways, you can really say that our involvement is what led to 9/11. These are things that many people don't know. And I don't think people really care about history in general. For me, that's a huge problem. But I want to get to this, to these articles and go over this stuff. Excuse me as I bring these articles into view. Adjusting things on my screen here. Sometimes I go to do this and it's all good, and then sometimes it is not. And it leaves you wondering what the heck is going on. All right. So on my screen, I have a New York Times article. This New York Times article is about Charlie Wilson. Charlie Wilson was a congressman from Texas who died at age 76 in 2010. And this is a kind of a brief article that goes over a little bit of what made one Mr. Charlie Wilson so known from such a small, representing such a small place in Texas. All right. Charlie Wilson, a 12-term Texas congressman who was best known for his playboy ways until He masterminded a covert effort to funnel billions of dollars in arms to Afghan rebels fighting the Soviets in 1980. Died Wednesday in Lufkin, Texas. He was 76. Jack Gordon Jr., the mayor of Lufkin, confirmed the death. Memorial Medical confirmed the death. Memorial Medical Center Lufkin said the preliminary cause of death was cardiopulmonary arrest. Mr. Wilson had a heart transplant in 2007. Mr. Wilson's exploits to provide as much as $5 billion in arms to Afghan rebels were the subject of a book and a 2007 movie, Charlie Wilson's War, directed by Mike Nichols. Tom Hanks portrayed Mr. Wilson, and Julia Roberts played Joanne Herring. I'm gonna read something about her too. It's just interesting. I'm so this is really not one of those podcasts where I'm gonna draw conclusions for you. You may draw your own conclusions as you hear these articles and, put certain things together in your head, because sometimes we all hear articles, put stuff together in our heads that may not be exactly meant to be put together, but we all have our thoughts. The conservative Houston socialite who first interested Mr. Wilson, a Democrat, in aiding the Afghans. So this lady was just a regular, I say regular, she was an affluent socialite, and she was the one that interested Mr. Wilson in this conflict in Afghanistan. And that's kind of just, for me, it was odd. A rich socialite somehow convinces a congressman to get involved in arming Afghan rebels. And she may have had pure motives. That's the thing. Sometimes people have good motives, but no one to check their decisions, because just because you have good motives doesn't mean the thing you're about to do is good in any way. Okay, a former president of Pakistan, General Muhammad Zia al-Haq, said it was hard to understate Mr. Wilson's role. All I can say is Charlie did it, he said on 60 Minutes in 1988. It was an unusual role for a congressman representing an unworldly East Texas district. From 1973 to 1996, Mr. Wilson kept his seat, by balancing liberal views on many domestic issues with a hawkish stance on foreign policy and paying close attention to his constituents' needs, until his secret role in Afghanistan became the stuff of Hollywood. Mr. Wilson's fame was pretty much summed up by his nickname, Good Time Charlie. An article in Texas Monthly in 2004 said he gave his girlfriends nicknames like Snowflake, Tornado, and Firecracker. And I'm personally not here to judge the man over his exploits, but needless to say, being a playboy does say something about a person. I mean, that can't be denied. Mr. Wilson was able to help the Afghans from his seat on the House Appropriations Committee and from another on its subcommittee on foreign operations. The Soviets had invaded Afghanistan in 1979, invited by the pro-communist government there in the face of an insurgency. Now, I will say this. I have read excerpts from a book. I got the digital copy on my desktop at home. I believe the title of the book is called Afghansy. And if I'm not mistaken, it was a regular rank and file Russian soldier, if I'm not mistaken, I believe, who wrote the book about his experience in Afghanistan during this time. From what I gather, the Afghan government requested the Russians help, and I believe they denied their help several times. They just didn't feel like this was a good idea, and then finally they got involved, and we kind of got intermingled. Now we all know how this works. That could, you know, really be Russian propaganda. We don't know that. The Russians could have put that out as propaganda for, you know, a reason why we should have never got involved. It may be true. It may be Russian propaganda. I can't, something like that, I haven't dug enough yet to substantiate one way or another, but I like to be transparent about that because I don't like to get on these podcasts and act like I know something I don't know. Okay. After he visited a refugee camp in Pakistan at the urging of Miss Herring and saw wounded and maimed Afghan guerrilla fighters, Mr. Wilson vowed to help them and became a key figure in Congress for doing so, overtly pushing for humanitarian aid and covertly obtaining military help, a risky endeavor against a rival superpower. He often gathered his colleagues' support by voting for military contracts that would serve their districts. And this is the thing about Washington that I really don't like. Excuse that chair squeaking. I'm in this hotel in this chair. I can't stop it from squeaking. Just does that. But anyway, I don't like the fact that this is how deals are brokered. Well, if you do this for me, I'll get this contract for you in your district. Now understand, these congressmen and congresswomen and senators are working on behalf of their state. But it shouldn't be like this. This is the stuff of banana republics, which we are easily becoming, or maybe we already are and have been for many years, and I just wasn't paying attention, which that's possible as well. But it shouldn't be like this. If what you're selling is good and right for the American people, then it should be brought before the American people. And if we support it, then we should all decide to move in that direction. Now, I understand every single nitpicky thing can't be brought up, you know, before the whole country, but something like this, getting involved in a foreign conflict, should be something that is brought before the American people. It should not be done in secret, and that's what happened here, right? And this is not a conspiracy theory. This is literally what happened, and that never goes over well, but we don't learn. Okay, from a few $1 million in the early 1980s, support for the resistance grew to $750 million a year by the end of the decade. Financing was funneled to Afghanistan in secret by Mr. Wilson and other lawmakers. So this is my problem with that. I know I said I wasn't going to comment much, but you know how I do. I don't like the fact that something like this is done in secret. Money is being funneled, and this is the problem with that. Money is being funneled more than likely via taxes. So your tax dollars is going to something you don't even know about. Now, I understand the need for secrecy. I understand the need to keep certain things out of the public view. I understand trying to make sure we don't give away everything to our enemies. I get all of that. But something like this, the American people definitely 100% should have known, my opinion. Let me see. We go back. Lawmakers. All right. The help went beyond money. When the Soviets deliberately killed camels and mules to cripple the Afghan fighters' supply lines, he flew in Tennessee mules. When the Central Intelligence Agency refused to provide the guerrillas with field radios for fear that Mujahideen transmissions would be picked up by the Soviets, he sent an aide to Virginia to buy $12,000 worth of walkie talkies from a Radio Shack outlet. Particularly helpful were Stinger missiles from the United States, which were used to shoot down Russian helicopters and became what many consider a decisive factor in wearing down the Soviets. By February 1989, the Soviets had withdrawn and the United States ended its support. Somebody brought up an interesting and a compelling argument, I must admit. And what they said was at this time, the Soviets were trying to spread communism everywhere they could. So if we just sit by idly while they spread communism and totalitarian and authoritarian regimes all over the planet, eventually it would be at our doorstep and we'd have to deal with it. And I that is definitely a compelling argument. My problem is, and you'll see later on, well, I'm just gonna go ahead and explain. We got involved. For those who don't know, I believe Osama bin Laden was a part of these rebels, and we agreed, or Charlie Wilson, I guess, him and his entourage, whoever was involved in all of this, convinced the Mujahideen that they would help, and the rebels, that they would help rebuild and uh, um, help rebuild Afghanistan's infrastructure, help them to pretty much establish themselves after this was all said and done. But when it was done, he couldn't get the funding for it. Remember, all of this was done in secret. And he was told, nah, kick rocks, we're not funding this. So he made them a promise, left them high and dry, which as a result created Al Qaeda and the Taliban. I believe that's how that happened. I've read many articles, on this over the years, so I can't remember all of the details, but I think, if I'm not mistaken, that's how all of that happened. They had a lot of anger towards us for not keeping that promise of staying and helping. Again, we go into places, do these nation building exercises, which you can't really do. You can't build a nation. A people within a country have to decide that they want to build their own nation. And if in the process of building that nation, they request help, I can definitely see the U.S. coming in and helping. But just going in, nation building, trying to bring democracy everywhere, maybe people don't want the democracy we have. I think it's crazy. We live in a pretty dope country, in my opinion. How long it's going to stay dope, we'll see. But the whole idea of a democratic republic and freedom, I love it. Maybe not everybody wants this. We just assume they do. All right. In later years, Mr. Wilson insisted that the United States had not made a mistake by supporting the Afghan rebels, among them Osama bin Laden. Yeah, I was pretty sure I was right about that. And the Islamists who would form the Taliban regime. He said if the United States had helped rebuild Afghanistan, it would have remained stable and not become a safe haven for Al Qaeda. And that may be true. The problem was you did all of this in secret. All of this money was funneled in there for secret. And I'm pretty sure there were congressmen and senators that thought, if it cost you this much to fund these rebels in secret, we cannot imagine how much it's going to cost to fund rebuilding this country, and the American people are not going to like this. Because at the time, probably the only way to do this would have been to raise taxes, and I'm pretty sure that was going to go over like a fart in church. Charles Nesbitt Wilson was born in Trinity, Texas, where his father was an accountant for a lumber company. On June 1st, 1933, he told about his first political experience in the book from which the movie was made, Charlie Wilson's War: The Extraordinary Story of the Largest Covert Operation in History, 2003, by George Cryle. Charlie was 13 when his dog strayed, and a neighbor apparently fed it something that contained crushed glass. The boy's first doused the man's garden with gasoline, and set it on fire. He then realized that the neighbor was a city council member and used his learner's permit to drive black voters to the polls to vote against him. The neighbor lost his seat by 16 votes. Mr. Wilson attended the Naval Academy at Annapolis and graduated in 1956. He served 4 years in the Navy and went back to Texas, where he was elected to State House of Representatives and then to the state Senate. In 1972, he ran successfully for Congress, where he outmaneuvered a fellow Texan for a seat on the Appropriations Committee as well as a slot in the subcommittee on foreign operations. Mr. Wilson, survived by his wife, the former Barbara Alberstadt, and his sister, Sharon Allison. His rowdy behavior produced sensational headlines over the years. There were at least 2 midnight car crashes. He was investigated for cocaine use, and election expenditure irregularities resulted in a $90,000 fine. In an interview, so I mean, I'm not gonna be too over the top and blast him too much, but it doesn't seem like he was a very dependable guy. Let's put it that way. Dependable in the sense of being upstanding, which I don't expect politicians to be perfect. Let me, get that clear, but it just seems like he led a lifestyle and had a mentality that was really not congruent with being a congressman. But that's not to say that he couldn't do a good job, right? Definitely not to say that. But when you couple that with these dealings in Afghanistan, I'm torn. Let's put it that way. I'm torn. Because in my mind, I'm like, okay, I understand. We don't want the Soviets to, take control over everything. But if it is true that the Afghan government at the time requested the help of the Soviets, then what business was it of ours to get involved? That's what I'm saying. In an interview with Washingtonian magazine in 1996, Mr. Wilson said Texas voters put up with his antics in part because of the vicarious thrill they got in watching him. Now that statement right there is very self-centered, narcissistic. Yeah, I mean, in my opinion, he added that he did not lie or whine when caught. Okay, maybe that's true. I don't know. I don't know much about him outside of things I read. I just say, well, yeah, I guess I goofed up again and go about my business. He said, those good Christmases, believe in the redemption of sin. Of course, I definitely believe that. Those who know me know I know that, but I don't know how much he really meant any of his, I guess, moments of repentance. I don't know if they were really repentance if he just kept doing the same thing with seemingly no remorse. Okay, so I'm gonna stop there and I'm gonna go on. So this is an article about Joanne Herring. I don't know if I'm gonna really read this whole thing. She was the Houston socialite that convinced him to help Afghanistan. Joanne Herring, an intriguing blend of ambassador and celebrity. Joanne King Herring holds a unique place in the cultural fabric of Texas. Throughout her life, she has stepped forward to help others in need. Long known within the corridors of power in both Afghanistan and Pakistan. And that, to me, it's just crazy that a Texas, she's wealthy, affluent, but a Texas socialite was well known in Pakistan by this general and in Afghanistan. Like, that's at a time where, I mean, who really had much dealings in these areas at that time, right? People probably didn't know what was going on in these areas at that time. I mean, I'm not saying anything nefarious happened. That's not my point, but again, who know, like, how does she get these connections? Herring's freedom fighting role in Southwest Asia was brought to a wider American audience when the true life 1980 story of Charlie Wilson's War was retold in 2007 with Oscar winning actress Julia Roberts playing the remarkable Herring. As moviegoers learn, Herring and Congressman Charlie Wilson were instrumental in forcing the withdrawal of the Soviet forces from Afghanistan without the loss of a single U.S. soldier. Now, here's the thing. Here's the thing. There was other forces at play, Middle Eastern countries, both in Iraq and Afghanistan, and funding the Taliban, Al Qaeda, and those who fought against us. Now, I love my country. So, of course, how we see them as the enemy who was helping our enemies. So, you have to imagine. So, sometimes we see things from the vantage point of our own country, right? Because we all love our country. I'm a patriot. I love my country. But you got to understand that other people love their countries as well. So, if we were helping the enemies of Russia fight against them, how do you think we were seen? That's an angle that I don't think is thought about. Now, I'm not saying that they're necessarily directly equivalent, but I mean, how else do you see that? All right. A native Texan, Herring has worked for more than 20 years among the villages of Pakistan, reconstructing cottage industries. In 2009, Herring funded Marshall Plan Charities, a nonprofit corporation dedicated to Afghanistan recovery. The organization complements the ongoing U.S. military efforts in Afghanistan by rapidly and effectively redeveloping normal, healthy civilian life village by village. And it's very possible that she felt remorse for her aid in the creation of the mess that was Afghanistan after Russians' withdrawal, and we didn't help. And it could be that that's exactly why she tried to do this, to maybe remedy her part in what happened. I don't know. Herring's ability to coordinate the minister's factory, the minister's factory owners and illiterate workers on the other side of the Afghan border earned her the Qaid-e-Azam Award, the highest honor given by the nation of Pakistan. She has also been honored to serve as a roaming ambassador of Pakistan, as consul general to both Pakistan and Morocco simultaneously. The skilled diplomat was a trusted advisor to the leaders of both countries. Now, I'm not saying that a person can't do that with good intentions, good motives, and good outcomes. But I will say that I find that suspect, and I find it hard to not find that suspect. Herring's other honors include being made Dame by the Order of St. Francis and being knighted by the King of Belgium. She is also the recipient of the Freedom Foundation at Valley Forge Award, the Development in Literacy Lifetime Achievement Award, the 2012 Counselor Corp Lifetime Achievement Award, and the 2013 Southern Heritage Lifetime Award. She is the only woman to receive the Afghan Army Award. Herring co-chaired the Special Olympics in New York City with the former Secretary of State Henry Kissinger. This lady was involved in a lot of stuff. I won't go over too much more of that because, that this article, let me see how much longer it goes on. Oh, okay, this is the end of the article, so I'll read this last paragraph. Her Texas roots have also called Herring to aid those in her hometown Houston. At a young age, she helped her grandmother found the Woman's Home, now a highly successful rehabilitation center. Herring also founded UNICEF in Houston. The what is that? The Colitis and Elitis, I think that's how you pronounce that foundation. The Noche de las Americas ball to honor Houston's Hispanics, and the Counselor Ball to honor Houston's large counselor community. Joanne Herring has spent a lifetime mastering the art of building a corporation between diverse groups. She refuses to slow down and is constantly moving forward and never quits. I think what may have happened is Miss Herring is one of those people who believes it's her duty to help impoverished communities, but sometimes some of these people and what they do helping, it actually hurts. Like they have good intentions, but what they move forward to do doesn't actually help whatsoever. And I'm not saying that's exactly what happened, but I'm saying as I read through that, that's the impression I got. But maybe I'm being biased because of everything that has happened in Afghanistan, that we know of now. So the first article, by the way, was a New York Times article. This one was from twu.edu, not exactly sure. Texas Women's University. Okay. This next article is a history.com article. Soviets agreed to withdraw from Afghanistan. Representatives of the USSR, Afghanistan, the United States, and Pakistan signed an agreement calling for the withdrawal of Soviet forces from Afghanistan in exchange for an end to the disputed Soviet occupation. The United States agreed to end its armed support for Afghan anti-Soviet factions, and Afghanistan and Pakistan agreed not to interfere in each other's affairs. Now, I wonder if the reason we didn't help Afghanistan once we left was part of this deal, right? And this is what I mean by people, Miss Herring may have been really trying to help the Afghans, but got involved in something that we really probably shouldn't have got involved in, and it didn't help them at all. It actually created a situation that's much worse, and much worse even now. In 1978, a Soviet-backed coup in Afghanistan installed a new communist government under Nur Muhammad Taraki. However, in 1979, a second coup toppled Taraki's government in favor of Hafzullah Amin, a Muslim leader less favorable to the Soviets. In December 1979, Soviet tanks and troops invaded Afghanistan, and Amin was murdered in the Soviet-backed coup. Babarak Karmal, a product of the KGB, was installed in his place. Now, again, when you're reading stuff like this, it's hard to know fact from fiction. And what I mean by that is winners always tell the story, and they don't always tell the most accurate story. So maybe all of this about the KGB in Russia is true, and it's very believable. This was their MO during this time. But the winners writing history doesn't necessarily always give you the most accurate picture of what's going on. Okay. Despite early gains, the Soviet army met with unanticipated resistance from Muslim guerrillas who launched a jihad or holy war against the foreign atheists. Armed by the United States, Britain, China, and several Muslim nations. That's interesting right there. The Mujahideen, or Holy Warriors, inflicted heavy casualties on the Russians. In the USSR, the Red Army's failure to suppress the guerrillas and high cost of the war in Russian lives and resources caused significant discord in the Communist Party and Soviet society. In April 1988, after years of stalemate, Soviet leader Mikhail Gorbachev signed a peace accord with Afghanistan. In February 1989, the last Soviet soldier left Afghanistan, where civil war continued until the Taliban's seizure of power in the late 1990s. And this is a New York Times article, this next article, and it is, I believe, an archived article also about Afghanistan. Okay, Moscow, December 28th. The Soviet Union today portrayed its military intervention in Afghanistan as a response to a request for military assistance against the provocations of external enemies. And this is why I was saying it in that book, Afghansy. I'm pretty sure I'd have to find it on my hard drive and kind of read through it again and maybe revisit this. But I believe this is the same story that was told in that book. Now, who's right? Which one is it? Did the Soviets conduct and encourage and orchestrate the two coups in Afghanistan? Highly possible, even probable. It was their MO. But did this Afghan government also request the help of the Soviet Union? Now remember, we as a country have done similar things, and I can't go over this and completely bypass the fact that we have done similar things in toppling governments. And you can say in a roundabout way, we put in people more favorable to us. We've done that. That's a fact. That's not even up for debate. We have done that. So it's a mental conundrum, right? I can say from my vantage point, better off that we as the United States win because we're not totalitarian. But then again, who are we to meddle in other countries' business? And we have done it. We have done it. We can't deny that. The Soviets did the same thing. Now, I can argue from the point that communism is definitely not the answer. We can have that debate. Some people support communism, but I can tell you right now, it ain't the move, B. It ain't the move at all. But what do you do? How do you solve this? How do you get away from this? How do you get away from these constant interventions into others' affairs? Is there a time where we do need to get involved? I think there are points and there are times where we do need to get involved. That the situation calls for that. But man, this is why I could never be a president. How do you make these decisions? I'm not going to say I'd be an isolationist, but I would probably be one that you would have to do some real hard convincing to get me involved. And I wouldn't want any funny business. But how do you get around that? I don't know. I honestly don't know how you get around that. Okay. The official Soviet press agency, TASS, depicted the Soviet action in the light by running the text of a statement by the Afghan government saying it had asked for Soviet aid and had received it. And I mean, we understand what the Soviets were at this time. We understand that this was state-run media. Could you really trust state-run media from a communist country? Yeah, not really. So nobody would be surprised if none of this was true. But what if it is? That's what I've always said to myself. What if it is? And we got involved. Nonetheless, we got involved in something that really didn't involve us. And we did it half-cocked. And in a lot of ways, we created the situation that we have. Now, I was going to get into other things. The CIA officer that helped uh, that helped Mr. Wilson and Miss Herring. His name is Gustav Lazarus Avracados, come from Greek parents. And the CIA operation to arm the Afghan rebels was called Operation Cyclone. Those are all items you can go look up. I won't bore you further with any more information and any more articles. But again, the reason I went over all of this because I think these are things we need to know to understand the situation, the hard situation that is Afghanistan. It's not easy. There's no good answers. And in many ways, I think we kind of brought this on ourselves as we've done throughout history. Small history lesson with some of my opinions. Y'all know what it is. Stay frosty, people.